We're going to look at 10 different certifications today, 8 offered up by the International Council for Machinery Lubrication, and 2 offered up by the Society of Tribologists and Lubrication Engineers. Now there's a few others, one in particular offered up by the National Lubricant and Grease Institute, and the Society of Tribologists and Lubrication Engineers offer up a couple others as well. But for our purposes today, we're just going to look at these 10. The first certification we're going to talk about is Machinery Lubrication Technician Level 1. It's for technicians responsible for some daily lubrication tasks, such as including oil changes and top-ups and grease and bearings, proper storage and care of lubricants and dispensing devices. For a certification like this, you have to have at least 1 year experience. You've got to pass the exam. It's recommended you have at least 16 hours worth of classroom time. The MLT also has a level 2. And that's responsible not only for technicians and engineers, though. And those are the ones that are actually looking to manage a lubrication team, selecting lubricants as well as troubleshooting, maybe troubleshooting some abnormal lubricant performance results out there, and actually supporting machine design activities too. For this particular type of certification, you need to have at least 2+ years work experience and go through about 24 hours worth of classroom time. You don't need to have a level 1 to get a level 2 here. A lot of times people have been around for a while that just circumvent the level 1 to go for level 2. I don't know if that's always the best idea. You actually want to learn a little bit later on that there's things covered in level 2 that aren't covered in level 1, and vice versa as well. I think level 1 provides a good foundation to go on to level 2. When we first look at this, there's approximately 11 different sections within the MLT 1 and 2. The MLT 1, level 1, has 8 sections. And you'll see in parentheses 1, 2. That's the MLT 2, though, goes into a lot more depth. Now, the exams for the MLT 2, they are going to have maintenance strategy and lubrication theory and lubricants and selection application, just like the 1, but the questions go into far more detail. You have to know a lot more. So when you take an MLT 2 class, it's going to be structured similarly to the MLT 1, but the content's going to go into a lot more detail. And you're also going to cover things in it that you hadn't covered in the 1, which is the lubricant formulation, grease applications, and lubricant testing as well. That wasn't covered in MLT 1, but it will be in MLT 2. Now, you can go take an MLT 2 without getting the 1. I don't recommend it. Not because I want to go and train you and get money out of your pocket for that kind of thing. Actually, it's not that at all. It's that I really, truly believe you have to start on the first and then work on to the second. It's like taking algebra. You don't take algebra 2 without taking algebra 1. You don't take calculus without first taking trigonometry. You can't take organic chemistry without taking general chemistry. There's a process, a procedure, a protocol, a path, if you will. Take it. Now this certification, Machine Lubricant Analyst Level 1, the MLA 1, this is compliant with the ISO 18436-4. And a little bit different because with the MLAs, in order to progress onto the levels, you just can't test into level 2, level 3. You have to start with level 1 now. That wasn't always the case, but it is now. And this targets technicians responsible for some daily activities, lubrication tasks, and some basic lubricant analysis for machine condition monitoring, and also includes oil changes and top-ups, greasing bearings, getting involved in lubricant receiving, and even proper storage and care of lubricants, dispensing devices, and some basic oil analysis. The level 1 MLA and the level 1 MLT share about 75% of the same content, but the MLA goes into a lot more detail with oil analysis. Now the Machinery Lubricating Analyst level 2, MLA level 2, goes into a lot more detail than level 1 did. We're going to get into this a little bit later on when we start looking at the content that's covered. But here, they're looking to target the technicians responsible for not only the daily activities with lubricant analysis and machine condition monitoring, but now they start getting into a little bit more where they go into performance of simple on-site tests as well, maybe running some on-site tests, and even managing test results and performing some simple diagnostics. For level 2, you have to have at least 2+ years experience and go through another 24 hours worth of classroom time. You have to have the level 1 before you can get the level 2 now. Now the Machinery Lubrication Analyst Level 3, the MLA Level 3. This one goes into a lot more detail than the 2 and the 1. Once again, this one targets technicians, but also includes engineers responsible for managing the lubricant analysis function. And these tasks include team management, even selecting the test slates for various types of equipment, setting alarms as well, getting involved in sampling system design, maybe even exploring instrumentation and software selection on site, getting involved with some more advanced diagnostics. So here you need at least 3+ years work experience, 24 hours worth of classroom, and you have to have a level 2 and a level 1 in order to get the level 3 now. Now we look at the MLA, the 1s, 2s, and the 3s. These are compliant. Here you can't take the 2 without first having the 1, or the 3 without having the 2 or the 1. You have to take them in sequence. And this is really, I think it's good. I really do. I mean, how many people go from high school straight on to the pros? Not many. I mean, there's a few of us that are LeBron Jameses, right? But really, you have to go spend your time out in the field and get it done. Start out with the level 1, and you'll actually see here. You see them in parentheses. This is where they actually share a lot of the same content, but they do diverge. We get up to the number 10, the X over there. It's the lubricant roles and functions. That's where MLA 2 and ML3 start really getting into more detail. Not necessarily covered in the MLA 1s, but it is covered in the 2s and the 3s. Goes into quite a bit of detail. And it isn't until we get into analyzing lubricant degradation and program development that MLA3 really starts to shine. That's not necessarily covered in the 2 and the 1, but they go into a lot of detail there. That's where it really starts departing and diverging from that as well. Now, Laboratory Lubricant Analyst Level 1 is primarily designed for technicians performing some daily activities, running the ASTM test protocols and the various instrumentation associated with lubricant, oil, and grease testing. The tasks typically also include receiving and handling samples, performing tests, reporting the results, inspecting the data from the individual test methods. For this, you have to have at least 1+ years experience. Requires 24 hours worth of classroom time as well. And this is another ISO compliant certification, the 18436-5 in this case. Now the LLA2 goes into a lot more detail. This is for lab managers primarily, but not necessarily exclusively. It's originally designed for that, but also really for diagnosticians as well. Those are the folks that are responsible for producing lubricant analysis data for machine condition monitoring, performing some of these tests and analysis, as well as diagnosing lubricant failure mechanisms. They get involved in instrument calibration, establishing SPC charts for them. Here you have to have at least 2+ years experience, 24 hours additional classroom time. You have to be a level 1 LLA before you can be a level 2. This is actually a fantastic certification. I have to say it's probably my favorite certification because it really does go right down into the really details and depth of oil analysis. It's something that is actually a great certification for those going beyond just a laboratory manager or a technician, a diagnostician, an end user, say a mine or a process planner or something like that, even a fleet. Maybe you have one of those individuals who really gravitate towards oil analysis and really want to get truly into it and really understand the nuances of it. This particular certification is perfect for those folks. And you would never think of it because you think the LLA2 is just for a lab manager or a technician or a diagnostician. I don't think so. I think this is a great certification for folks who really want to delve deep and become an expert in the world of oil analysis. I'll talk a little bit about the LLA1 and LLA2. These are my favorite certifications. Laboratory Lubricant Analyst, and that's not because I'm just a bench geek and like all the sciencey stuff. Well, I do, but the bottom line is I think that if you're going to embrace oil analysis, to understand how these tests are done and really getting deep into the instrumentation, get an appreciation for the data interpretation, the quality control, and whatnot. These are great certifications. They go this is the type of certifications that go beyond those for the folks that are in a laboratory. I know we talked about this earlier. The level 1 is for the technicians, and the level 2 for the diagnostician, the lab managers. But really, if you got one of those folks out there in your organization, and they really are just got such a talent and a love and a passion for oil analysis and tribology and whatnot, it's a great certification to go for. It really is. I mean, you don't have to be a lab rat to actually go and have this certification. Very applicable, very useful out in the field. to understand data and really truly get into it rather than just taking things at face value. This is getting one of these certifications is great. And this is one of those things that you probably have to work on levels as well. It is ISO the 18436-5 compliant. Start with level 1. It's going to prep you great for the level 2. You'll see level 1. It's 4 major sections. There's calibration, reagent management, lubricant health monitoring, a lot of tests, sample handling preparation. Level 2 gets into some serious detail with compatibility analysis, contamination analysis, wear debris analysis. Gets into a lot of stuff with data interpretation as well. The LLA 2-in-1, they're fantastic. I couldn't recommend them higher. And really, there's not a lot of folks out there that even offer up these classes. I know Rich does, I do. Heck, I think we might be the only ones out there. But anyway, they're just fantastic. And hopefully there's going to be a lot more people out there opening up these classes too. I mean, I don't mind the competition at all. Heck, rising tide lifts all ships. I think the more people that take advantage of this, the better we're all going to become. I think these are fantastic certifications. Highly recommend them. Now we have the Machinery Lubrication Engineer, the MLE. This is a relatively new certification. It's only been around for a little over a year now. This is an engineering level certification. It's targeted at reliability and asset management professionals. This has got a really strong emphasis on lubrication and analysis. It's ideal for those involved in some daily activities associated with development and implementing and management of lubrication programs. It's intentionally structured for those with the responsibility to guide and facilitate their organization. A tactical step towards the ISO 55001 certification. This is both an engineering and a management level certification. For those providing general engineering support through a user education program, including maybe lubricant selection or lubrication and sampling hardware selection, implementation, overall lubrication program setups, optimizing PMs, inspection, and lubricant analysis troubleshooting. This is really one of those creme de la creme. It's like a PhD in the whole thing. If you think of the MLT and the MLA as a bachelor's degree, this thing right here is maybe it's even a postdoc for Pete's sakes. It's really, there's only about 50 of us in the whole world that have this, and it's quite a bear of an exam to pass. But I tell you what, got some great content to study, good conversations with other folks that are trying to get their MLE, and I tell you, it's something to strive for. It's a fantastic certification, very useful. It takes about you have to have 5 years work experience at least. And I recommend 40 plus hours worth of classroom time. And I know ICML doesn't necessarily have a requirement now for classroom time for this certification. But just from experience, this is not something to be taken lightly. But I'll tell you what, when you do achieve this particular type of certification, it really does mean a lot. Now here's the crown jewel for the ICML, Machinery Lubrication Engineer, the MLE. Boy, I tell you what, ICML put a lot of time into developing this. A lot of folks had their hand in establishing this certification. There's a lot of material here. It's not an easy exam to pass either, let me tell you. It's about 50 of us got this thing. There's 23 different areas to really focus on, from asset management down to continuous improvement, from planning to periodic task like support, risk management, oil reclamation, tribology, a lot of stuff in here. Not an easy exam to pass, a lot of stuff to study. Once again, looking into this thing, I recommend, and like I said, ICML doesn't necessarily come out there and tell you how long a class you should be taking, but you got to take a class that's at least 40 hours worth of content here. And before you even take a class, you really got to have at least 5 years experience, bone up on this stuff. Do a lot of reading on the content that they tell you to have a good familiarity with as far as the body of knowledge goes. And you might stand a chance of actually passing this thing. Now, with all these things, I want to bum out if you fail the first time around. Big deal. Who cares? Nobody cares but you. And quite frankly, if you just buckle down and keep on studying, you'll eventually pass the darn thing. But this is a really good, great engineering certification to have. Not many of them have. And I tell you what, you master this content, and it means something. You actually become valuable to yourself and to the world around you. Now, the CLS, the Certified Lubrication Specialist, the granddaddy of them all. Sales guys always want to get their CLS. They'd throw that little 3 letters behind their name on their business card. They throw it down on the desk of a purchasing agent or a maintenance manager. And they impress the living heck out of those guys, right? They feel good. And I tell you why, because that CLS is not an easy exam to pass. In fact, you hear people banging about, oh, I missed it by 3 points. You know what? STLE doesn't report percentage. At least they never did. Maybe they do this year. They have a percentage. The bottom line is it's not an easy exam to pass. So if you failed the first time, don't feel so bad. Take it again for Pete's sake. Should be all right. But it's not a very easy exam to pass. It does really mean something, though. It's got good world international recognition. There's only about, I'd say, about 1,200 people with it. We'll go into the content, which it covers, but really it's not limited just for sales guys or folks who want to impress. The core responsibility is really about evaluating and selecting lubricants to use and to purchase. CLSs can go out and conduct lube surveys and train lubricators and understand how to assemble a work list and develop maybe quality assurance protocols and get involved in used oil analysis programs and troubleshoot and problem solve. A lot more than just something to have behind your name. Actually, it can be very useful. Requires about 3+ years work experience and at least 32 hours worth of classroom. Got to pass the exam, offered up by STLE as well. Now the CLS, the old granddaddy of them all. Heck, people have been having this CLS for 20 some odd years, right? Everybody's got their CLS now. Actually, not many people at all have it. It's about 1,200-1,300 people, but a lot of people know about it. It's internationally known as Certified Lubrication Specialist. There's about 20 different areas to focus on. Now the CLS is different than the other ones in several different respects. One thing, they go into pneumatics, they go into seals, they explore metalworking fluid, solvents and cleaners. Those are the things that aren't covered in any of those. Now, I did talk a little bit about solvents and so forth, and maybe the LLA 1 and 2. Maybe touched upon seals and the MLT and a little bit MLA. But I tell you, the CLS really goes into detail, especially in metalworking fluid, problem solving and lubrication programs as well. So it does depart drastically from, say, the MLE. It's a different certification, and that's the bottom line. Now, like I said, sales guys used to take this, become more valuable to their clients and so forth. This is the type of thing that actually any professional in the world of lubrication should have. If you're working for if you're working for a mine, working for a fleet, working for a factory, and whatever industry you're in, working for a lubricant company, a distributor, a CLS is a good certification to have. Now we have the Oil Monitoring Analyst, OMA 1. We're not going to talk about the OMA 2 today. I know there's a few of you out there that got it. It's a fantastic certification. I think that maybe they offer up that exam maybe once a year. Christ, I don't even know if the last time that was even offered up. I'm gonna get one of those someday. Anyway, it's the OMA. It's an oil monitoring analyst. It's involved in predictive maintenance professionals. They oversee oil analysis programs back in the shop in the plant. They recommend for mechanics and engineers and operators and even tradesmen, even on-site personnel whose core responsibilities are as oil sampling and reviewing oil analysis reports, performing correct test methods, and maintaining the overall care and equipment and feeding of the assets. Something like this is going to require at least 1 year work experience and 24 hours worth of classroom hours. There's only about 500 folks in the whole world with OMA 1. I think there's only probably about 40 people in the whole world with OMA 2 for that matter. But it's a great certification. It's a lot different than the MLA 3 and the LLA 2 in the respect, but I'd actually say it's kind of if you're going to try to combine the three, it'd probably be, an OMA would be really reminiscent of a combination of the LLA 2 and the MLA 3. Great certification to have, though. Now we have the OMA 1. I told you we're not going to talk about the OMA 2 today. Just going to focus on the OMA 1, the Oil Monitoring Analyst. And here they have 6 basic areas that you have to master. Fundamentals, machine wear, application sampling, analyzing lubricant degradation, wear debris analysis, and program development. About 500 people with the OMA. It's actually it's a great certification as well. A lot of times before ICML really started several years ago, when it was just STLE, people with a CLS would get their OMA. They'd start out, it's really interesting, they'd start with a CLS and then get their OMA. And then it started becoming where people would say, okay, I'll start with the OMA and it would prep me for the CLS. Well, they're just not alike. I mean, I guess they probably could support each other, but OMA doesn't necessarily prepare you for the CLS, and the CLS doesn't prepare you for the OMA. And when you go into the fundamentals, that's probably in the machine wear, that's when they really start sharing a lot of content, but they start splitting off pretty quickly. So really, they complement each other. Now we're going to look into is the content, the stuff that you're responsible for, the body of knowledge, if you will, for these various certifications. From the MLE, MLT1, MLT2, the CLS, the OMA1, LLA1, LLA2, MLA1, MLA2, and MLA3. Now this particular slide, the next two, the reason why we're having this webinar today. This actually was used back in the competency development webinar we did a few weeks ago, and it shows the content comparison between the MLTs all the way down to the OMAs. And you'll see where actually you can see how these things build on each other. And here we're going into another comparison, obviously going from gears all the way down to lubricant health monitoring. Once again, comparing the different types of certifications that are available. You'll see how they depart. You'll also notice the MLE seems to be touching upon everything always. A lot of content there. Now, once again, we're looking at from lubricant manufacturing all the way down to safe handling and preparation and so forth and so on. You see where the MLA starts departing. We started the MLA3, it's going into a lot more detail. LLA1 and 2, they start emerging, but once again, we still have the MLE. It starts covering more, a lot of content there. And finally, round it out. Now, here's where we actually see seals and solvent cleaners. Only CLS covers that. And then MLE, well, I go into some supplier compliance and alignment as well. Transportation lubricants, everybody looks at that. But, you know, there's only MLE and CLS really get into some turbines as well. Everybody gets into wear debris analysis to some extent. But here we're looking at some recommended class hours, as well as years experience. Keep in mind. Here we're actually just looking to see if we can compare the CLS and the MLE for your professional certification alignment. You know, for your lubrication engineer, or machinery engineer, or reliability engineer, all the way to a lube tech. Which one would you choose, the CLS or the MLE? I don't know. I'd go for them both, quite frankly. It's kind of like having kids. Which one's your favorite? Well, you don't want to ask that question, but it's really it's tough. I quite frankly, I think you could probably be well if you had either one or both. There's a lot of people, different opinions out there. You know how that goes, but they cover so many different things that I think they make perfect complements to each other. But you know what? You have to have at least 5 years experience, I'd say. And you got to put in a lot of time and study as well, but they're well worth it. Now we can take a look at, if you look at the lubricant, the laboratory oil analysts, they go for the LLAs, the 1s and the 2s, and the OMA. And that's all well and good. You know, that makes perfect sense. I'd say it's required for that position. But there's a lot of other recommended too. I think, you know, if you take a look at a reliability professional, the LLA, it's optional, but the MLAs is definitely something to go for, and even a little bit of MLT. And then as far as the lubrication technicians go, it certainly does make sense to have the MLTs. And I would suggest the LLA, you know, because if somebody truly gets into it, it's a perfect complement to it. And then obviously, if you have a craftsman out there, a mechanic, a technician, just basic MLT1 is very suited. And you know, as far as being a supervisor or general manager, I don't think there's anything wrong with taking the MLA1 as well as maybe an MLT1. Being in there with you guys, understanding what they're going through and getting a clear understanding of what the content is and how it can be useful. I think it's valuable. You know, there's a lot more that we could talk about with these certifications. If I was you, I'd go to the websites for OMA, STLE and ICML. They go into a lot of detail. You know, the other thing too is go into plantservices.com. Pull up an article I wrote on which professional cert's good for you. If you don't know, just go into plantservices.com, put in Holloway as a search item. You'll see some stuff. Not a bad thing to read about. We'll go in a lot more detail. Hey, if you guys ever need any more information on these certifications, it's pretty much what I do is I do certification preparation. Feel free to contact me at my company, Fifth Order Industry, Holloway at Fifth Order Industry, or just give me a call. Love to chat with you. I do online, offline, in-person, individual, group, and whatever you need. We want to get you certified, get you all ramped up, and put some of this knowledge to use out there. Thank you so much. We're going to take some questions now, and we'd love to hear from you. Thanks.